The requirements for your first essay number 1, Gothic Poetry Analysis. Please note this is 500 words due, you'll have to check Blackboard, I can't remember. 500 words is basically 2 pages, double-spaced, 12-point font Times New Roman. What do I have to do? You will write a 2-page close reading of any poem we have read thus far. Applying the analytical tools we have developed in class, annotation, scansion, which means counting the syllables, figuring out the meter, and analysis, you will write a vivid and technical description of this poem that explicates the formal qualities of the work. Explicates means you're going into detail, explaining and closely reading the formal qualities, meaning the form, the construction of the work. You will insert a photo of the text of the poem with your handwritten annotations in the first page of this paper. Why do I have to do this? Okay, well, this is a good question. Literary analysis is highly technical. You can literally write a whole essay on just one line of poetry if you know enough about how poetry works. Poetry is also very hard, but when you start to break down word by word, line by line, you start to see how the writers manipulate language to produce meaning. This is like what we're doing in this whole course, looking at how writers manipulate language to produce meaning. I'm making you practice this dissection skill. It's a dissection, taking it apart. If you can do it to difficult old poetry, you can do it to any language you encounter. Remember, literary analysis is when you examine how the language creates the meaning. You do this sort of thing all the time anyway. For instance, let's say I accidentally bump you while walking down the hallway and then say, "My bad." That's a straightforward, casual apology. It doesn't create tension and it is over very quickly. Let me pause here. If I was like, "My bad," no, you'd be like, "Okay, no big deal." Everyone moves on with their lives. But let's say that I purposely push you and then say coldly, "My bad." Now what? It's the same words, but everything is different. Now we have a fight. Literary analysis would involve explaining how those same words are used to mean opposite things in each instance. In the first, I'm taking responsibility in a friendly, casual way, like the tone is different. In the second instance, I'm provoking a fight by pretending to apologize for something I clearly meant to do. The first provokes reconciliation. The second provokes antagonism. Okay, look. Do you see how much you can write about just 2 words? The 2 words were "my bad" or "my bad." Do you see how much you can write about just 2 words? That's what we are training to do. Look deeply into how language can be manipulated to produce meaning. The same words can mean opposite things sometimes. What I did in the previous paragraph is a close reading of just 2 words. I looked at what they meant, their tone, the context in which they were uttered, and their effects in the situation. So, how do I do this assignment? First, read the poem out loud. Maybe even read it to a loved one. Oh, typo. Sorry about that. Enjoy it. Notice how the meter and rhyme work. See the Prosody Handbook. Which, by the way, wrong thing. It's here. This is the Prosody Handbook. It's available under resources. You should have read all of this by the time you start writing your essays. It's all the terminology you need to be familiar with. See Prosody Handbook. Notice the effects that the metrical writing, that's writing with meter and rhythm, has upon the reading experience. Write 1 paragraph about this experience. This is an aspect of the text that you can describe later in your paragraph or your paper. Annotate the poem. Using a pen, annotate the formal qualities of the poem. Determine if it has a regular meter through scansion. Scansion's where you count the syllables. Annotate and determine the rhyme scheme. Circle and label any figurative language, vivid imagery, or allusions. Allusions are references to things. Choose 2 to 4 lines to analyze. Make sure that you know every word, every connotation, like every reference, and allusion, reference, in those lines. Make sure you can close your eyes and visualize what those lines are saying. Write a draft. Just start combing through the poem, word by word. Don't worry about the introduction or conclusion. Just start describing the words and then try to make a statement about what the words mean. What is the purpose of this poem, and how do these lines contribute to that purpose? What is the argument that the poem is trying to make about love, death, writing, poets, family, etc.? How do those particular words, images, rhythms help to produce this meaning? For inspiration, read through the beginning of the Prosody Handbook. Note, you don't have to have a thesis in your first draft. In fact, I normally don't come up with one until after I've done a lot of analysis. I don't know why there's an extra word there. It's pretty. Okay. Revise your draft. Oh, I obviously didn't revise that last paragraph. Make sure there is a thesis statement that's somewhere in the first paragraph. It doesn't have to be a big deal, just a sentence that encapsulates or covers your entire essay's main point. Some call it your essay in a sentence, like your whole essay, but in a sentence. Usually students put the thesis as the last sentence of the intro paragraph, though that isn't totally necessary. Also, make sure you go through the essay standards for literary analysis, which is below, and make sure you've done all the things it lists. Finally, last few things. Format the paper correctly. Your paper must follow all the formatting instructions laid out in the standards listed below. Your works cited list will include only one text, and it should be properly cited according to MLA guidelines. To keep things simple in the works cited list, you need only include the author's name, the title of the poem, and the year it was published. Please look at a sample student essay in the handbook. So many students just turn in unformatted work, and they doom themselves to low grades as a result. There's even a video under course resources that shows you how to format. When I see something properly formatted, it gives me pleasure. When I see something unformatted, I wonder what other details are they not paying attention to. Okay, then you're going to insert a photograph. Don't forget to include a photograph of your annotated lines or stanza at the beginning of your essay, right under the title. In Google Docs, there's a menu item labeled Insert, or you can copy and paste the photo directly. If you need help, Google Insert Photo into Document, or ask a friend for help. Okay, you should get good at this because it's what you're doing in the discussion forums. 8. Double check your final version of the essay. Remember, good students plan on spending at least 5 hours writing and revising their papers. If you need help, please make an appointment at the Writing Center. There's Google Hostos Writing Center. That's right, 5 hours. At least. That's what it takes. Finally, copy, paste, and fill in the chart below. This goes after your works cited list. A link to this document can be found on Blackboard under course content. Yes, it's in the resources section. Remember, an essay that contains any evidence of academic dishonesty will receive a 0 and will be reported. There's no room for plagiarism. It's okay if you look at things on the internet to help you figure things out, but, and I repeat, but, you do not need to read anything on the internet to write this paper. I understand you might want to check what things say on the internet, but it can also pollute your brain. Like, I'm looking for your original insights, which are always much more interesting than what I've read on Google. Okay, how am I graded? Remember, you are not graded on each individual essay. We will assess your portfolio at the end of the semester. If all the essays pretty much live up to the standards listed here below in the Essay Standards for Literary Analysis, and you've shown improvement through revisions, then you will receive a B on the portfolio, which accounts for 60% of your final grade. Got it? All right, so Essay Standards for Literary Analysis. There's a link to this which you can copy and paste at the end of your essay. And you type X if true. Formatting. Here are the categories. Formatting, sentences, meaning, style. And then you type what you need to work on. Then I will write something here, and then after you revise it, fill it in here. Okay? And I want comments in all of these boxes. So here, Mla Heading, I put my name and page numbers in the top right. You go to Insert, and then click Page Numbers. You don't just type it on each page. I have an interesting title in the center. My essay meets the minimum word count, not including the heading of work cited. My essay is in 12-point Times New Roman font. I'm reading all this because students don't do this. I've pressed tab at the beginning of each paragraph. You press tab. You don't just put random spaces. Press tab. If you're writing on your phone, you have to figure out how to do that on Google Docs. You have to check all the settings. It's in there. You capitalize I, and you capitalize all proper nouns. Names, like the author's name, places, titles. I italicize book titles and films. I put article titles and short works in quotation marks. This goes for poems. A poem title is put into quotation marks. I do not add random spaces before periods and commas. There's no space before a comma or a period. I put one space after each comma, period, colon, semicolon, and so forth. I use correct MLA in-text citation for each quotation or paraphrase. And I have proper MLA works cited as my last page. Again, there should only be one thing on there, the poem. Okay, sentences. All of my sentences make sense. Mistakes do not get in the way of my meaning. I have proofread all my sentences, so there are no sloppy mistakes that I could have fixed by spending more time on the essay. I have introduced, accurately copied, and cited and explained any quotations I use, my meaning. There's an obvious thesis statement somewhere in the introduction of my essay. Each supporting paragraph contains information that relates to my thesis. My introduction is not boring. My conclusion is neither too short nor repetitive. I am making analytical connections between the form of the text and its meaning. My style. I write with a colorful, entertaining, and unique voice. I avoid cliché. You might need to look that word up. I go beyond the obvious and contribute creative, moving, and thoughtful ideas into the world. Dare to dream. Now let's remind ourselves here. We go to course content, English 111 resources. Okay, check out the syllabus and handbook, right? There's a whole section in the handbook. I'll just click ahead in the handbook. Okay, general tips. What is the essay portfolio? Here's the portfolio instructions. How to set up your Google Drive folder, portfolio evaluation, blah, blah, blah. Here's the essay standards I just went over. Here's how you're going to be graded on your portfolio at the end. Journal, journal, journal. Keep going. Academic integrity. Citing your sources. Here's a whole bit on how to cite your sources. You need to read all this, okay? How to use outside sources. You don't need to do that for this. But here's how you introduce quotations. Copy the quotation. Here's how to cite it. Here's some phrases you can do to explain it. Oops, I don't know what I just clicked. There's some more citation rules. Here's a sample student essay. Notice this is the last name and the page number. So what the top looks like. This is where your title goes. It's not in fancy font and it's not in bold. Okay, you should read this. It's a little funny. It's not like super funny. Okay, writing tips. Read these. The number one key to good writing. Time, that's it. Oh, wow, that's simple. You have to spend time writing. Number 2 key, reading. You should read that. I don't know how to start. This is the most common thing students say to me. Okay, you should read that. Outlines. This is a note about outlines. I personally don't use outlines, but a lot of people do. Here's a whole bit about thesis statements. I wrote all this. This is stuff I believe, okay? So if you want to know what I think about it, it's right there. Introductions. Here's about how to write an introduction. Thesis statement again. Body paragraphs. And conclusions. Conclusions are very difficult. What not to do. What to do. Okay, here's some transition and signal phrases. Words to use. These are good verbs you can use. Okay, and then there's some worksheets below. Please take a look at this before you hand in your essay. Since I wrote all this, I will know if you didn't look at this. So I really encourage you to do that. And it'll help you save time and get better. Please email me if you have any questions.